So you followed my tutorial for how to add custom textured items to Minecraft, and now you want to make them functional. Well, in this tutorial, I'm going to be explaining a brief overview of how you would go about making custom functional items in Minecraft. So in general, the way that you're actually going to go about making a custom item is you'll follow this sort of flow. So you'll have some sort of trigger or condition for when your item was actually used. Let's say you have a sword. Well, that condition is going to be that you dealt damage, right? And then it's a custom item, but we need to determine if you actually use the custom item. So that's when we're going to check for the held item and see if it was that custom item. And then we need to determine where you actually used it, because if I know that you used the custom item, like a sword, I want to probably know if you used it on a mob and which mob you used it on. Or if I have a custom pickaxe, I probably need to know where you mined a block, not just if you mined a block. And then finally, you just have your functions that are going to run when you used your custom sword or your custom pickaxe or whatever. So that's pretty much the flow. We determined when we used the item, we determined if we actually used the custom one, we determined where it was used, and finally we run some functions at that location. Now, in the previous tutorial, I did explain a lot on how to make a data pack, so please follow that if you haven't already. Basically, we need to make a folder called data, and we need a pack.mc meta file that contains this sort of thing. Inside the data folder, we need a Minecraft folder, and then we need our namespace. So in this case, I'm going with tutorial. You can name this whatever you want, just keep it unique. In the Minecraft folder, we have a tags folder, we have a function folder, and then we have a tick and load.json file. You can create a .json file named whatever by just changing the extension to JSON. Windows will tell you that changing the file extension might make it unusable, but it is perfectly usable. So you can create these. These just need to contain something like this, where we just say that tutorial load and tutorial tick are going to be our tick and load functions. This would of course be whatever namespace you are using. We do need to create those two files, so we can back out to the tutorial folder, create a folder called function, and then create two MC meta, and then create two MC function files. We can create tick.mc function. Again, Windows is going to tell us that this is potentially going to make the file unusable. It is incorrect. And then the other one just needs to be called load. Inside of load, I would suggest adding something, just say loaded or something like that. This will send a message to chat telling us that the data pack loaded. And then your tick function will just do whatever commands you put in it every game tick. Now we're going to be starting with just an item that when you hold it, it will run a function constantly. So we can reload the game and see that our load function loaded. And if I put something into the tick function and then I reload the game again, you'll see that, well, the server's saying hi to you. So pretty simple stuff. Yeah, we'll go from there. I did already cover the method of how we're detecting holding an item in the previous tutorial, so you may already have this. But let's jump into that. We're going to be doing a predicate to check if you are holding an item with this model. So go back to your data folder, navigate to your tutorial folder, create a folder called predicate. There's no S on the end of that. And then you will want to make a new JSON file. I already made one. It's called holding custom item. And so it's a JSON file. If we open this up, it looks like this. Basically, we have a condition where we're checking if the entity properties of myself, so whichever entity is running the predicate, we're going to check if they have equipment main hand. So if the item in their main hand has this component of an item model matching whatever the item model you did in the previous tutorial is. So in this case, I'm just calling it custom item. I think for that tutorial, it was custom sword or something like that. And of course, if you made your own, it's going to be a different namespace and a different name. But this will basically just check if you're holding an item that has this predicate, this data to it. So we can go back into Minecraft, we can reload, and we can just execute if predicate, and you'll see that this will pop up. And if we run it, it will pass if we're holding the item, and it will fail if we are not. and if we're holding anything else, it will also fail. But this one's a stone pickaxe. I have a stone sword and a stick, and it will succeed for all of them. Because I'm checking for the model, I am not checking for the base item. Alright, so from here, we're going to want to do a bit of optimization just to make our data pack run a bit better. But in our tick.mc function, we could just like execute as at all to do something. And we could do that a whole bunch of times. But that's a lot of checks for every player in the world. And there's not much reason to split them like that, when we could just execute as all of them, at all of them, and then run a new function, and we'll just call this tutorial as players. So now, every player in the world will have this function run at them one time per game tick. And then we can do as many checks as we want in here, and it's going to be a little bit more efficient. So we do need to make this function, because it doesn't currently exist. So we can just navigate over to our function folder, just copy any of these MC functions, and we wanted to call it as players. So we can grab that, and we'll just have it say tick or something like that. Now if we go over to Minecraft, hit reload, now the player, instead of the server, is saying tick every game tick. And so now, instead of doing that, well, what if we were to just grab this and have that say like holding item or whatever. So now we're going to say if we're holding the custom item, then it should run the thing, right? So reload that, and now nothing's happening until I hold the item. Then it tells me I'm holding the item. And it will, of course, work for all of these. But we probably wanted not just a text event to happen, and we likely wanted more than one thing to happen. Of course, we could just duplicate this over and over again, but now we're checking if you're holding the item over and over again. This is a somewhat laggy check to be doing by itself. So if you're going to be doing a whole lot of them, just to run the same commands from it, then you should probably make another function. So we're just going to call this tutorial holding custom item. Sure, that works. And now we can create this function real quick. So we can just copy any of these. We were calling it holding custom item. Open that up, and now we can do whatever we want. And now, cool, we have a function that will run whenever we are holding a custom item. In this case, I'm going to give an effect. Let's go with night vision, and we'll give it for 1 second, level 0, and hide the particles. We'll also go with particle flame and display that at chest height with like a small radius to it and a very low speed, and we'll say like 5 of them, and we'll force them to play. And so now we can go back to Minecraft, we can hit reload, and when we start holding the item, you'll see we do have night vision and we have flames coming off of us, and we stop holding it, night vision goes away, flames go away. And yeah, that's pretty much how you would make a custom item that does something when held. This is generally pretty good for, like, I don't know, you're making a rings data pack, like I've already done. Or you're making some sort of, like, I don't know, like a totem thing. Or maybe you want, like, a flame sword that gives off flames around you and scorches mobs just in your vicinity or something like that, right? The point is, this should get you to where you need to be in terms of making a custom item. I'd check out the wiki if I were you. Just look through the commands page, see what's actually available to you. Some simple ones are obviously going to be stuff like set block. We already looked at effect. We have, I mean, like a give command potentially could work, or like a loot command. Particles is always good. There's play sound for sound effects. So you have a lot of options at your disposal. So just make sure to look through them, figure out which one is right for your application, and yeah, make it work out. Okay, so I've disabled that for now, as you can see, and we're going to move on to the next one, making a sword. So if we remember the workflow that we talked about, we basically just need to detect when damage was dealt, detect if a custom sword was held while doing it, and then detect which mob you actually hit, and then run the function as them and at them. And so that's actually pretty easy. So let's dive into that. Okay, so the first step is to actually determine when we've dealt damage. So we'll go into our data folder, go back into the tutorial folder, and then we need to make an advancement folder. And this is going to be how we're going to detect dealing damage. So I've already made an advancement called deal damage. You could name this whatever, it doesn't really matter, but I suggest just keeping it something simple like deal damage. And if we open this up, you'll see that it looks a little bit complicated, but it's actually really straightforward. So basically we just have an advancement that we will get when a criteria has been met. That criteria is we're going to check if the player hurt an entity, and then just make sure that the damage type is direct. This will then mean that if we like used a bow or TNT or a splash potion or whatever, none of those are direct damage, and so we won't get an advancement triggered for these. And then we are going to, when you successfully get this advancement, it's going to reward you by running a function, and it's going to run this function deal damage. We don't currently have this function, so let's create that real quick. So we can go to our function folder, just copy any of these again, call it deal damage, open that up, and in here, we are going to, of course, do a couple things. But first, we can determine if our advancement actually loaded by going in game, and we can run advancement revoke at s only, and then tutorial, and you'll see tutorial deal damage did show up. I could hit enter, and you'll see that I can't lose an advancement that I already had, but this is an important command to grab. So you can just grab from here and go back over to your deal damage function and put it in here. Basically, the idea is that once we get the advancement, we need to get rid of the advancement so that we can get it again later. So that's what we're doing here. We are getting an advancement that runs this function that then gets rid of the advancement so that we can get it again later. And so now, let's say that we just put, I don't know, like say dealt damage in here. Go back to Minecraft, hit reload. Well now, whenever I deal damage, cool, it knows that I dealt damage. Only problem is it doesn't matter the item I'm dealing damage with. You can see even a punch is counted as dealing damage. I mean, perfect though. That's the first step done. We have successfully run a command when the trigger condition of dealing damage has been met. Now we just need to determine if we're holding a custom item. We can do that exactly the same as we did before. And so we could go to our asPlayers function where we had the predicate to check if we're holding a custom item and just grab all of that, put it here, and have it say like custom sword or whatever, right? So now when we try this in Minecraft and we spawn in our mob, well, if I hit it with the custom modeled thing, we get it to say custom sword in chat, but now if I punch, nothing happens. So now we're one step closer. Our final step is just determine if I hit a mob and which mob it actually is, where it is. All that's fun stuff. And to do that, it's a little bit more complicated. It's going to take a couple steps, so let's get started on that. Oh, and real quick before we actually do that, one thing that's going to help us down the line is if we give ourselves a tag of, I guess, tutorial.attacker or something like that. This will determine, basically we can just say that we're the person doing the damage, and then we can remove it at the very end of this. All right, so I've already written this code, so I'll just paste it in. But there's a fair bit to this line, so I'll go through it step by step. So for starters, we're going to keep the check for the predicate check for if we're holding the custom item. But then we're going to look in front of us a little bit to see if there's a mob. We're going to check all entities, but we're going to check if they're the type. And this is a tag of tutorial mobs player. I'll dive into that a little bit later. Just know that this is basically a list of every mob in the game that you could damage with a sword. And so this would exclude certain mobs like, well, certain entities, like an item you shouldn't be able to hurt with your sword, or an item display, or an item frame, or a painting, or maybe an armor stand. I don't know. And then we're going to check another tag of, this is a different type of tag. We're just going to say that if we're not was.attacker, so I guess in this case I need to change this to tutorial.attacker. Then this won't run at them. So this is what I was talking about with, we're giving the player this tag here to make sure that the sword cannot hit themselves. Then we just do a distance check to make sure that the mob is within 10 blocks of us, because reasonably we won't be dealing damage more than 10 blocks away from us. And then finally, this is the important part, we're going to check if that entity has the hurt time in BT to basically be saying that on the exact game tick that we're checking, I was hurt. And that really narrows the field down, because we know that the player just swung their sword, and now there's a mob that's been hurt. Technically, there's situations where a mob could have just coincidentally taken damage on the same game tick, but this is going to narrow it down about as much as possible. And then we're just going to execute at them, and then in this case just run the say custom sword. So this doesn't work yet because we don't have the entity tag, but let's add that next. So an entity tag needs to go into the tags folder. So that's in our tutorial folder. We will add a folder called tags, open that up, and then we need to make a new folder called entity type. And then in here, we want to make two different JSON files. We have one that's mobs player and then another that's mobs. Mobs player is basically just this simple little thing. We're saying that this is going to be all mobs in the game. So it's referencing the other file that we have, and then also the player. I do it this way because there's quite a few times where you don't want anything to run at the player, so it's nice to have them split like that. And then if we look at the mobs tag, this is just a ginormous file where I typed out every single mob in the game. Yeah, but you can obviously just copy this from the download of the tutorial that's in the video's description. So with our entity tag present, well now, I don't want a baby zombie. Now, if I hit a mob, you'll see that now the husk is the one saying custom sword. And this would also work for like a sweep attack. If there's a bunch of mobs in one place, I think we'll get a bunch of them to say custom sword all at once, because they're all taking damage all at once. Okay, so we did already hit the three criteria that we're going for. We have the trigger condition, we have the check for the held item, and now we're finding where to actually execute it, which is at the husk, right? So now we just need to run the functions. So let's do that. So you can just scroll to the end of this, and instead of saying custom sword, we can just do function tutorial, and then in this case, I'm just going to call this custom sword. You would probably want to name this to something like what your sword's about. Is it an ice sword or whatever? Call it something related to it. But we can just save that and then make the function itself. So we have custom sword, open that up, and now we just need to do something here. So in this case, it's pretty much the same as for the ticking sword. I'm not going to go through all the possible things you could do. But again, we could do a flame particle. I'll just use the same command because why not? Like so. And then I don't know. Why don't we just like teleport this guy up into the air or something? That could be cool. And then maybe set the block below it to be a magma block or something. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Whatever you're wanting to do for your sword, you can get to work. So we can reload this and try it out, and you'll see we got a magma block. There are particles being emitted, and it did definitely teleport up into the air. So yeah, that would be a functional sword. And this would work on players. It would work on every mob in the game. But like I said, it won't like affect items that are on the ground nearby. But yeah, I think that pretty thoroughly covers how to make a custom sword. Like I said, it's actually pretty simple. Just check when you dealt damage, check if you're holding a custom sword, find the mob that you hit, and then run whatever functions that you decided you were wanting to do. Okay, time for the final section, and that was going to be a custom pickaxe. So let's look at how to do that. It's pretty much the same workflow, but I'll walk through it because it's a little bit different. Okay, so our trigger condition for this, there isn't actually an advancement for it. We're going to need to use a scoreboard objective, and that's going to be the used pickaxe scoreboard condition. So that's going to be how we're going to trigger it. Then we can check for the held item like we've been doing. And then we just need to find where. In this case, we're just going to look for the drop that the block had, which does mean that you can't use the custom pickaxe on blocks that don't drop anything. Unfortunately, I don't know of a better method to do this, and I don't believe most of the community has found one either. And then finally, you just run the functions at that item that is dropped. So yeah, let's look at how to set up the trigger condition first. So we're going to want to open our load.mc function, and we're going to add the scoreboard objective. So the scoreboard objective, you can name whatever, doesn't need to be tutorial, but in this case, we're just going to get a score that goes up whenever we use the item stone pickaxe. And I would suggest using a stone pickaxe as your base item, because other items in the game can be used for stuff. What I found was stone pickaxes work, and stone tools in general are the best, because a wooden one could be used for fuel. A gold one will, like piglins and stuff, will go after them. You can also smelt it into a nugget. Same with an iron one, you can smelt that into a nugget. A diamond tool you could turn into a netherite one. And if I give myself a netherite, whatever, let's give myself 2 of these. You'll see they have the right model and everything, but this is a thing for all tools, but you can just craft them together, and then you'd be left with a netherite pickaxe with no data on it. So you would just get free tools out of that. So stone is probably the best one to go with. Anyway, tangent aside, you'll want to, like I was saying, set up a scoreboard objective just to check when you used a stone pickaxe. When that happens, you will end up getting a score added to whatever you called the score. And we can detect that in our as_players function. And so to detect that, we're just going to simply do execute as ourself, because we know that the player, we're executing it as all players, right? And so we can just execute as ourself now. And we can check if they have a score of used pick greater than 1, or 1 or greater. And if that happened, we can just determine the pickaxe. Just run a function called determine pickaxe or something along those lines. So I'll create that function real quick. Determine pickaxe. And then in here, we're going to do a couple different things. The first one to do is we're going to want to reset that score so that we're not just constantly running this. So we can just scoreboard players reset ourselves, and then reset the tutorial used pick or whatever you called it. And then if we wanted to, we could like say mind or whatever. And if we try this in game, you'll see when we reload, and I go mine something with my pickaxe, every time I do, it's going to say in chat that I mined something. And most importantly, it will reset every time so that it can keep detecting it. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to check if we are holding our custom item like we've been doing previously. And so now we've hit 2 different steps on our flow chart. Now we just need to determine where we mined. And to do that, we just need to find the item that dropped from the block. So to do that, I'm going to use this little bit of code here. So I'm going to look in front of the player just a little bit, and I'm going to check for the nearest entity that's an item and specifically has 2 bits of NBT. The first one is that it shouldn't be on the ground, because items when mined are never on the ground. For the first couple game ticks, they have to land first. And then also, I am looking for an item that has an age of 0. So this means that the item appeared on the same game tick that I mined the block. Every game tick that an item has existed for, it gets 1 added to this number, and so game tick 0 would be the first game tick it existed for. And then from here, I can just execute add it and then run whatever. So now if I try this in Minecraft and I mine these blocks, well, now the cobblestone that I'm mining is saying that I mined it. And so from here, we can just run a function to do whatever we want, like we did for the other ones. So again, that's just, we run a function, we do our namespace. I'm just going to call this custom pickaxe. That's simple enough. And then go over here, probably just copy custom sword, call it custom pickaxe. Open that up, and I'm going to, I guess, do the particle, might as well. We'll leave it at the same location though. Probably shouldn't do a set block. I don't know, I'll do it anyway. And yeah, might as well just run that, see what happens. So now, when I mine this, we get a magma block placed down. And we also got some flame particles to appear. One really simple thing you could do with this that is really easy and would work nicely. You can just run a fill command to make like a hammer or something. And you can make it fill around itself. And then have this, let's see, we set it to air replace, I don't know, like cobblestone, or we'll say stone. And if we run this, you'll see now we are breaking in a big area. And I think we can make this slightly better by adding destroy to the end of it. Yep, I just added that. And so now you'll see that it destroys them all and they actually drop. And you could use a block tag here instead of just stone. Like you could go, let me grab this command. Instead of replacing stone, you could replace Minecraft mineable. Yeah, mineable pickaxe. And so now any item or any block that's mineable by a pickaxe would be able to be broken here. And I could show you that real quick, because you can see, I mean, great example. I'm just mining stone, but here, I'll place the magma block down. You'll see it will also break, because that is something mineable by a pickaxe. But I don't think, like, yeah, grass and stuff will not break, because that is not a pickaxe mineable block. Okay, here's some andesite over here. Cool. Yeah, it works on that as well. So, really simple way to get that to work. And, yeah, that's pretty much all there is for this tutorial. Cool. Well, I hope that sparked your creativity and has gotten you in a good spot to be able to create pretty much any custom item that you want. But if it didn't, please just leave a comment and I will see where I can improve this in the future. My goal here is that I wanted an overview tutorial that is applicable to pretty much every item. And then I'm going to make more specific tutorials fitting for each type. So maybe I'll make a bow tutorial. I'll make maybe a better, more in-depth sword tutorial or a more in-depth pickaxe tutorial. But I also want to make stuff like a totem tutorial or stuff like that. So if any of those interest you, definitely leave a like on the video and hit the subscribe button to not miss out on those videos when they come out in 6 months from now. So have a good one, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.